The courtroom doors opened to a storm no one saw coming. A 62-year-old woman named Elaine Bradford strutted inside, chin high, lips pressed into the kind of smile that says I'm here to win. She wasn't here to defend herself, she was here to sue her own daughter-in-law for what she called her right to see her grandson. The audience shifted, murmuring. Even before Judge Judy spoke, everyone could feel it, this wasn't just another petty dispute. This was entitlement wrapped in self-righteousness, walking straight into the lion's den. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Judge Judy entered quietly. She didn't slam her gavel or raise her voice. Not yet. There was something different about her that day, a softness in her silence, a weight behind every blink. She glanced at Elaine, then at the papers in front of her, then at the young mother sitting alone on the other side of the courtroom. The silence was heavy enough to make the audience hold its breath. Elaine started first. Her voice carried that well-practiced tone of false concern. Your Honor, I've been denied the right to see my own grandchild for months. My daughter-in-law is keeping him from me, and that's not fair. I helped raise that boy. I deserve time with him. Judy didn't respond immediately. Her eyes flicked up just long enough to make Elaine hesitate. Then, calm but cutting, she asked, and what exactly makes you think this courtroom is where love gets enforced? The question landed like a thunderclap. Elaine blinked, stunned. The audience murmured again. Judy's tone wasn't angry, it was curious, restrained, and dangerous. The kind of calm that precedes a storm. Elaine tried to recover, fumbling through her papers. Because, Your Honor, I have rights as a grandmother. I've done everything for that family. Paid bills. Bought groceries. Judy interrupted, voice still quiet. Did they ask you to? Another pause. Another silence so sharp it could cut glass. Elaine's jaw tightened. The camera panned to the young mother, Megan, barely holding her composure. Tears pooled but didn't fall. She whispered, she shows up uninvited, tries to take over, calls herself the mother. Judy didn't move, didn't speak. But her pen stopped tapping. The smallest gesture in the room, yet it changed everything. The audience leaned in, sensing the shift. Beneath the tension, something powerful was building. For the first time, Judge Judy wasn't the loudest person in the room. Elaine was. And yet, Judy was the one everyone was watching. The underdog in her own court, surrounded by arrogance, by ego, by entitlement, and she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If you believe respect isn't inherited, it's earned, hit that like button right now. Because what's about to happen next will redefine justice inside this courtroom. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair as the papers rustled in front of her. The crowd still buzzed from Elaine's opening statement. She had painted herself as the victim, the loving grandmother pushed aside by an ungrateful daughter-in-law. But Judy had seen this kind of performance before. It was the same performance she'd seen from bosses who played the martyr, from parents who confused control with care. The kind that hides manipulation under a blanket of love. And as always, Judy knew, if you listened long enough, entitlement always exposed itself. Mrs. Bradford, Judy began, voice calm, deliberate. You claim your daughter-in-law is denying you access to your grandchild. But let me ask you something simple, why do you think she doesn't want you around? Elaine hesitated for the first time. Because she's immature, Your Honor. She doesn't understand family. I've raised children, I know what's best. She's young, emotional. Stop, Judy said sharply, not raising her tone, just slicing through the words. You think age gives you ownership over other people's choices? Elaine blinked. The audience shifted. Megan, the daughter-in-law, lowered her head, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. Judy continued, you know, I've seen this before. A person mistakes experience for entitlement. You think love gives you rights. But love isn't a lawsuit. Her voice softened, almost pitying. It's a privilege. Elaine's lips tightened. I just want to be part of his life, Judge. I've given everything to that family. Everything? Judy's eyebrows lifted. Did they ask you to? The question echoed through the courtroom. Elaine didn't answer. The silence was a spotlight, burning on her face. Megan finally spoke, voice trembling but honest. She used to show up unannounced. Every weekend. Criticizing how I dressed my son, what I fed him, who I let him play with. When I asked her to call before coming over, she said, "I don't need permission to see my grandson." Elaine's head snapped toward Megan. "That's not true," she snapped. But Judy's pen clicked once. The sound was small, but it froze the room. "Mrs. Bradford," Judy said, her voice suddenly cold, "you're in my courtroom. You'll have your turn. For now, you'll listen." The crowd leaned forward. Judy didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her calm was heavier than thunder. Elaine's composure started to crack. "I've only ever wanted what's best for that boy." "Really?" Judy asked. "Because what I'm hearing is that you wanted what's best for you." For the first time, Elaine had no response. Judy looked down at the case file again, flipping slowly through the pages. "You filed for court-ordered visitation," she said, "against the mother of your own grandchild. That's not love. That's control disguised as love. And I don't deal in disguises here." The words struck like iron. The camera panned across the audience, jaws tightening, eyes narrowing, some nodding in silent agreement. The energy had shifted completely. The woman who entered this courtroom as a confident victim was slowly becoming the villain in her own story. But Judy wasn't gloating. She didn't smile. She didn't smirk. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about truth. And truth, she knew, takes time to bloom. She could feel the tide turning, but she didn't rush it. Instead, she turned her gaze toward Megan. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "Why haven't you filed a restraining order?" "Most people would have." Megan swallowed. "Because she's family. I didn't want to make things worse." Judy nodded slowly, respect flickering in her eyes. "You see, Mrs. Bradford. That's love. Quiet. Unselfish. Protective. The opposite of what you brought in here today." Elaine's face hardened, but she said nothing. Her silence said everything. The narrator's voice, soft, cinematic, in that moment, the courtroom didn't just see a lawsuit, they saw a mirror. One that reflected how love can twist when pride takes control. Judge Judy wasn't the aggressor. She was the underdog surrounded by noise and arrogance. But with patience, she was peeling back every layer of deceit, one calm question at a time. Judy leaned back, the faintest sigh escaping her lips. "Mrs. Bradford," she said quietly, "I've spent years watching people confuse affection with authority. You may love your grandson, but this case isn't about him. It's about you learning to let go." The words landed like a verdict even before the verdict was given. And for the first time, Elaine looked smaller. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the papers she thought would win her the case. Judge Judy wasn't done yet. But the storm was coming. The crowd could feel it. Elaine's smile returned, but it was thinner now, more like armor than confidence. She straightened her blouse, looked at Judge Judy, and said, "With all due respect, Your Honor, you're not a mother who's been kept from her grandchild. You don't know how that feels." The courtroom gasped. It wasn't just what she said, it was who she said it to. The audacity. Judy didn't flinch. Her expression didn't even change. She simply blinked once, then set her pen down. "Mrs. Bradford," Judy began quietly, "I raised 2 children. I've been a mother, a grandmother, and a judge for longer than you've been fighting this fight. So let's not confuse experience with wisdom." Her tone was surgical. Not angry, not defensive, precise. "Now," she continued, leaning slightly forward, "tell me why you think this courtroom owes you what the mother of that child has chosen to deny." Elaine hesitated again, realizing her earlier confidence had backfired. "Because, Your Honor, I helped raise that boy. I bought his clothes, his crib, his first toys." Judy raised a hand. "You provided gifts, not guardianship." The audience murmured. Elaine opened her mouth, but Judy continued, "Love isn't measured in receipts. It's measured in respect. And from what I'm hearing, you've spent more time keeping score than keeping boundaries." Elaine's jaw locked tight. Her voice sharpened, trembling with frustration. That's not true. Megan is ungrateful. I've done everything for that family, and now she acts like I'm some kind of intruder. Megan finally spoke, softly but firmly. You are an intruder. Her hands shook slightly as she spoke, but her tone carried the weight of years of suppressed hurt. You tell people I'm an unfit mother. You show up at my son's school without calling. You took him to a doctor once without even asking me. The air turned heavy. The crowd reacted in disbelief. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Elaine turned to Megan, eyes blazing. I did that because you weren't doing your job. Judge Judy's voice cut through the noise, low, deliberate, and final. Mrs. Bradford. You just made my point for me. She leaned forward. You see, people who truly love others don't undermine them. They don't humiliate them. They don't step into a role that was never theirs to play. You can't call yourself the hero while trying to rewrite someone else's story. Elaine's lips parted, but no words came out. The energy in the room shifted, again. Judy had turned the tide without raising her voice. For the first time, Megan looked up. She wasn't crying anymore. Her eyes met Judy's. There was quiet strength there, something that wasn't present when the hearing began. Judy saw it too, a flicker of restoration. The narrator's voice rolled softly over the moment. In a courtroom filled with tension, the truth was beginning to show itself. Entitlement wasn't power, it was desperation dressed up as confidence. And Judge Judy, the underestimated underdog, was letting the truth do the talking. Elaine, refusing to let silence win, tried again. I'm not the villain here. She's keeping my grandson away for no reason. I just want to be a part of his life. Judy tapped her pen twice, her signal that she was done being polite. Mrs. Bradford, I don't think you understand how this works. You're not here because the court wronged you. You're here because you overstepped. There's a difference. Elaine's voice grew sharp. You're taking her side. Judy smiled faintly, almost pitying. There are no sides in my courtroom, only facts. And so far, the facts don't favor you. The audience murmured again. The hum of quiet agreement grew stronger with every exchange. Megan's calm dignity stood taller than Elaine's outrage. The woman who once looked fragile now seemed unbreakable. Judy looked down at her papers, then back at Elaine. Let me make something clear. No one here is denying you the right to love your grandson. But love is a gift, not a demand. And when you turn it into leverage, it stops being love. The sentence hung in the air like a verdict. Elaine's posture faltered. Her chin dropped slightly. Her confidence was cracking, and Judy saw it. Then, Judy leaned back, her eyes softening just a little. You know what the real tragedy is, Mrs. Bradford. You came here thinking you were fighting for your grandson. But what you're really fighting is your own reflection. The one that can't stand being told no. The audience was silent. Even the cameraman stopped shifting. The narrator's tone deepened, the courtroom had become a battlefield between truth and pride. Judge Judy, once underestimated in her own courtroom, was quietly dismantling entitlement, not with anger, but with truth so sharp it didn't need to shout. Elaine lowered her eyes. Her voice, when it came, was smaller than before. I just miss him. Judy's reply was quiet, almost gentle. Then start earning your way back. Not through court papers. Through respect. And in that moment, the entire courtroom exhaled as if it had been holding its breath for too long. The storm hadn't passed yet, but everyone could feel it coming. The air in the courtroom felt heavier now, thick with everything that hadn't been said. Elaine sat with her arms crossed, the faint tremor of anger rippling through her fingers. The confidence she had walked in with was gone, replaced by something quieter and more dangerous, desperation. Judge Judy, meanwhile, remained composed. She wasn't leaning forward or raising her voice, she was simply watching. Waiting. Letting silence do what no gavel could. Mrs. Bradford, Judy finally said, her tone almost conversational, what did you hope would happen when you filed this lawsuit? Elaine blinked. Justice, Your Honor. I want fairness. I want what's right for my grandson. Fairness for him, Judy said, or control for you. The question landed like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples spread instantly, through Elaine's composure, through the crowd, through the invisible wall of tension that hung between the two women. I just want to be part of his life. Elaine insisted, her voice rising. Judy nodded, slowly. And how does suing his mother accomplish that? Elaine faltered, her lips parting but no sound coming out. The silence was more punishing than any reprimand. The narrator's voice filled the quiet, the courtroom could see it now. The fight wasn't for a child. It was for control. But Judge Judy, patient, grounded, and underestimated, was turning the battle in her favor without a single raised word. Judy glanced at Megan, who sat perfectly still. "Ms. Carter," she said, addressing her for the first time in several minutes, "how has all this affected your child?" Megan took a shaky breath. "He wakes up crying sometimes. He asks why Grandma's mad at me. I don't know how to explain to a 5-year-old that love shouldn't hurt." A murmur spread through the audience. Elaine looked down, blinking fast, but Judy didn't let up. "That's the consequence of your actions, Mrs. Bradford," Judy said. "You say you love this child, but your lawsuit is tearing his home apart. You want to teach him love? Then start by showing him respect." Elaine's voice cracked. "I only wanted to help." "No," Judy cut in gently. "You wanted to win. There's a difference." The courtroom fell still again. Every word from Judy felt deliberate, like she was peeling layers from a lie everyone had believed for too long. She wasn't grandstanding, she was teaching. And the lesson was hitting home. Elaine tried one last defense. "I was there when he was born. I changed his diapers. I watched him grow." "And then you forgot something," Judy said softly. "You forgot that children grow up, and so do their parents. Your son got married. His wife became the mother. That's the natural order. And the hardest part of love is knowing when to step back." The older woman's shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked her age. Megan quietly wiped a tear, whispering, "Thank you." Judy shook her head slightly. "Don't thank me yet. We're not done." She turned to Elaine again. "Let me ask you something. Before you filed this lawsuit, did you ever try just apologizing?" Elaine's eyes widened. "Apologize? For what?" "For making a mother feel small in her own home." The words cut deeper than any legal argument. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't speak. They just watched, every person aware they were witnessing something that went beyond courtroom drama. Elaine's mouth trembled. I didn't mean to." Judy nodded once. "Then mean it now." Silence. Elaine looked at Megan, but no words came. The air buzzed with unspoken emotion, the kind that feels too big for words. Judy leaned back again, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Bradford, you came here thinking I'd force a family to heal through court orders. But healing doesn't come from verdicts. It comes from humility." The narrator's tone softened, Judge Judy wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. Her calm was power. Her patience, her weapon. The underdog was winning, not with volume, but with truth. Elaine whispered, "I just wanted him to know me." Judy's voice lowered. "Then start by knowing yourself." That was the breaking point. Elaine's defenses cracked completely. She covered her face with her hands. For the first time since walking into the courtroom, she didn't look proud. She looked human. Judy glanced down at the file, then closed it softly. "We'll take a short recess," she said. Her tone was even, but her eyes carried weight, the kind of gravity that doesn't need to be spoken. "When we return, we'll talk about what happens next." The gavel came down lightly. Not as punishment, but as punctuation. The narrator's final words for the section rolled like a closing line in a story the world needed to hear. For the first time, the crowd wasn't cheering for Judge Judy's sharpness or wit. They were seeing her humanity, the quiet strength of a woman who stood against arrogance and taught that even in battle, compassion is power. The calm before the storm had arrived. And when it broke, nothing in that courtroom would stay the same. When the court reconvened, the shift in energy was immediate. The whispers had faded, replaced by a heavy, anticipatory silence. Elaine Bradford sat at the plaintiff's table, her eyes red, her pride fragile but still flickering. She hadn't expected to cry, hadn't expected to feel cornered. But something in Judge Judy's calm voice earlier had cracked her armor, and now, every word would finish the job. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Elaine. "We're going to get something straight," she said, voice firm but even. "This court does not reward emotional manipulation. You can't file a lawsuit because you feel disrespected. You're not entitled to another person's child, Mrs. Bradford. No one is." Elaine started to interrupt, but Judy raised a hand. "Don't speak. Listen." The tone wasn't angry, it was surgical, like a teacher correcting a stubborn student. "You've mistaken proximity for permission. Just because you were in that child's life doesn't mean you own it." The courtroom was utterly still. Judy continued, each word measured. "You say you love your grandson, but love without respect is possession. And that's not family, it's control." Elaine's lip trembled. "You're making me sound like a monster." Judy leaned forward, eyes piercing. "No, Mrs. Bradford. I'm reminding you you're human, and humans make mistakes when they confuse ego with love." The words sliced cleanly. The audience sat stunned, some leaning forward with wide eyes. The camera zoomed in, capturing the moment Elaine's face shifted from anger to realization. It was the look of someone who'd been holding a mirror too long, finally seeing what's inside. Megan watched quietly from the other table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wasn't smiling, she didn't gloat. There was only gratitude, relief that someone, finally, had said what she couldn't. Judge Judy's tone softened but didn't weaken. "I've seen hundreds of cases like this, people who believe they can love others on their own terms. But love doesn't come with ownership papers. It comes with accountability." She leaned back slightly. "And that's what's missing here." Elaine said nothing. The tears that had threatened earlier now fell freely. For a woman who had built her identity around control, losing it in front of millions was a kind of justice she'd never imagined. Judy didn't gloat. Instead, she closed the file and looked at her directly. "You came here thinking I'd give you a verdict that would fix your family. But families aren't fixed by verdicts. They're fixed by humility. You can start today, or you can walk out of here the same way you came in, alone." A hush swept through the courtroom. Even the bailiff stood motionless. Judy's tone deepened, final and resolute. "This case is dismissed, with prejudice." Elaine exhaled shakily, realizing she had not only lost her case, but the illusion that fueled it. If you've ever watched pride collapse in the face of truth, comment "Justice served" below. Let's flood this feed with respect for real strength, the kind that doesn't shout, it stands tall. The gavel had fallen, but the echoes still rippled through the room. Judge Judy sat for a moment longer, watching as Elaine gathered her papers with shaking hands. The sound of crumpling documents filled the silence like a confession. Megan remained motionless, eyes glistening, not from triumph, but from release. For the first time in months, she didn't have to defend her motherhood. The verdict had done it for her. As the cameras zoomed in, the audience caught something rare, a flicker of softness in Judge Judy's expression. She wasn't gloating. There was no satisfaction in her eyes, only the gravity of truth. The underdog judge who'd been underestimated, even mocked by Elaine earlier, had done what she always did best, restored balance. Not through power, but through principle. The narrator's voice rolled in, calm yet emotional. Justice had been served, but something deeper had happened in that courtroom. It wasn't just a ruling, it was a reckoning. For everyone watching, it became clear, entitlement loses its grip when confronted with dignity. Elaine stood, her movements mechanical. The same woman who had walked into this courtroom like a queen now seemed smaller, humbled, almost lost. She turned slightly toward Judge Judy, as if to say something, but words failed her. Megan rose quietly from her seat. Their eyes met, just for a second, and in that second was everything neither had the strength to say out loud. Judy noticed it too. She tapped her pen once, the signal she often gave when she wanted the room to pause and absorb. "Mrs. Bradford," she said, her tone softer than before. "You're not the first person to confuse love with ownership. And you won't be the last. But you've been given a lesson today. What you do with it will determine what kind of grandmother you become." Elaine swallowed hard, nodding slightly. I I understand. Judy gave a small, firm nod back. Good. Then start there. The crowd began to stir, the tension dissolving into murmurs. People were talking quietly to one another, some shaking their heads, others nodding in agreement. It wasn't the kind of courtroom drama that ended with applause, it was the kind that left people thinking about their own families, their own boundaries, their own mistakes. The narrator continued, word of the ruling spread fast. Clips of the exchange went viral within hours, Judge Judy's calm takedown of entitlement shared across every platform. Hashtags trended, hashtag Judy Justice, hashtag boundaries matter, hashtag love is not control. And for once, the internet wasn't divided, it was united in one sentiment, that's what accountability looks like. On TikTok, a clip of Judy saying love without respect is possession hit 5 million views within a day. In the comments, people shared their own stories, mothers, daughters, and even grandparents confessing how this episode mirrored their lives. One wrote, I was Elaine once. Took me years to learn the same lesson. Another added, Judy didn't just give a verdict, she gave therapy to half of America. In a small diner in Louisiana, a family sat around a TV replaying the moment Elaine said, I just miss him. The father nodded slowly and said, that's the problem. People think missing someone gives them the right to control them. His teenage daughter replied softly, Judge Judy's right, it's about respect. Even outside the courtroom, the story had become more than entertainment. It had become a reflection. Meanwhile, Megan and her son left the courthouse quietly. Cameras followed them, but she didn't say a word. When asked by a reporter how she felt, she simply said, free. It was one word, but it carried the weight of the entire case. The footage cut back to the courtroom, where Judy was reviewing the next case file. Her expression was neutral again, focused, professional, but beneath that, the audience sensed something deeper, she had carried the story with her. The kind of case that reminded her why she still did this after all these years. Because every once in a while, justice wasn't just about the law, it was about reminding people how to live with decency. The narrator's tone softened, the story of Elaine Bradford wasn't about one grandmother's arrogance or one mother's pain. It was about the invisible wars fought in every family, the battles for love, control, and respect. Judge Judy didn't just end the fight. She revealed what it was really about. Back online, discussions raged on, not in anger, but in introspection. Family therapists quoted the episode in blogs. Social commentators analyzed it as the definitive example of generational entitlement meeting modern accountability. Even late-night hosts mentioned it, replaying Judy's line, love without respect is possession. One comedian quipped, only Judge Judy could turn a custody case into a masterclass on emotional intelligence. The crowd laughed, but it was the kind of laughter that came with agreement. And yet, through all the attention, the most powerful reaction came from Elaine herself. 2 weeks later, she wrote a letter to the show's producers. The narrator read her words aloud, I was angry when I lost. But I've watched the episode 10 times now. I see what I did wrong. Tell Judge Judy, thank you. The internet exploded again, this time with forgiveness. Viewers commented, that's growth, and Judy didn't just win the case, she healed it. In her chambers, Judy read the letter quietly. She didn't smile, didn't boast. She just placed it inside her drawer with a stack of other letters, each one from someone who'd come to her courtroom one person and left another. She closed the drawer and whispered, almost to herself, that's why I still do this. The narrator concluded, for years, Judge Judy had been known for her sharp tongue, her fiery dismissals, her no-nonsense justice. But this case showed something rare, a quieter kind of power. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. The kind that changes people, one truth at a time. In the background, the last clip of the episode played, the moment Judy said, families aren't fixed by verdicts. They're fixed by humility. The words echoed over a montage of Megan hugging her son, Elaine walking out slowly, and Judy watching them both go. The screen faded to black. Justice wasn't loud that day. It was calm, human, and unforgettable. The episode's final moments carried a weight that lingered long after the credits would roll. Judge Judy sat quietly for a moment before speaking again, her gaze steady, her tone softer than it had been all day. The storm had passed, but what remained in its wake was something profound, a rare silence of understanding. Mrs. Bradford, she began, what happened in this courtroom today isn't about winning or losing. It's about learning. Love, respect, humility, those are not things you demand. They're things you earn. Elaine nodded faintly, her voice trembling. I understand that now. Judy's eyes softened. Then let that be your victory. The narrator's voice rose gently, it was no longer about the lawsuit or the bitterness that fueled it. In that quiet room, 3 people who had walked and broken left with a lesson that millions watching would carry with them. The real power isn't in authority, it's in understanding. Elaine turned to Megan before leaving, her voice small but real. I just want him to know I love him. I'll give you space. Megan's lips trembled into a faint smile. That's all we ever needed. As the 2 women exchanged that fragile peace, Judge Judy watched from the bench, silent, but deeply moved. For a woman who had built her legacy on firmness and control, she knew that sometimes the greatest act of strength was restraint. She didn't need to say more, her verdict had already spoken. The narrator continued, Judge Judy has always been known for her sharp tongue, but what happened here was different. This wasn't about humiliation, it was about healing. And it reminded everyone watching that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, hoping for statements. But Megan simply held her son's hand, guiding him to the car. There were no cameras, no speeches, just the quiet dignity of a woman reclaiming her peace. Elaine followed at a distance, her steps slower, her heart finally catching up to her consequences. For the first time in years, she wasn't trying to control the story. She was living in it. Online, the world kept talking. Clips of Judge Judy's verdict flooded social media again, but this time the comments carried something deeper than outrage or applause, they carried reflection. One viewer wrote, Judy didn't destroy her, she freed her from her own pride. Another added, this wasn't just a court case, it was a therapy session for every broken family. Back in her chambers, Judge Judy sat with her coffee, staring out the window. The late afternoon light cast a warm glow across her desk. The day had been long, heavy even, but necessary. She smiled faintly to herself, then whispered, sometimes justice doesn't need to be loud to be heard. The narrator closed with the final words, that day, Judge Judy wasn't just the law, she was the lesson. A reminder that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's control in disguise. And when control falls apart, what's left is truth, and truth, when faced with courage, can rebuild everything. If this story reminded you that real love means respect, not control, hit like, comment, boundaries matter, and subscribe. Because next week's case will test everything you thought you knew about justice.